Imagine you spent 30 years filling up a 401k. Every paycheck, a little went in. You barely noticed it, and one day you look up and there's $300,000 sitting there. Now you're retiring or changing jobs, and you decide to move that money into an IRA, somewhere with more choices and a little more control. You fill out the paperwork, you feel good about it, and a few weeks later, a check shows up in the mail. But the number is wrong. You were expecting $300,000. The check says $240, $60,000 just gone. Nobody stole it. You didn't make a typo. And here's the part that surprises people the most. This happens to careful, intelligent, financially responsible people every single week. Today I'm going to walk you through exactly why that $60,000 disappears, what happens next if you don't know the rules, and the single sentence that makes sure it never happens to you. Stay with me, because this is one of those small things that quietly costs people a fortune. Before we go anywhere, let me say the most important thing right up front, because I don't want you sitting there with your stomach in a knot. If this happens to you, the money is not lost. I'll say that again, it is not lost. When you move a 401k and the check is written out to you personally, the law requires your old plan to hold back 20% and send it to the IRS as a prepayment of your taxes. On $300,000, 20% is $60,000. So the check in your hand is $240, and the $60,000 is sitting at the IRS with your name on it. It is still your money. The danger isn't that it vanished. The danger is in what you have to do next to get it back, and the clock that starts the moment that check lands in your mailbox. You might be wondering who on earth designed it this way, and whether somebody set a trap for you. They didn't. The rule is old, it's boring, and it applies to everyone equally. Here's the logic. When that money leaves your 401k and comes to you, the IRS has no way of knowing, in that moment, what you're going to do with it. Maybe you'll redeposit every dollar into a new retirement account, exactly like you're supposed to. Or maybe you'll spend it. If you spent it, it would be taxable income. So they hold 20% upfront, just in case. The same way your employer held tax out of every paycheck for decades. It's not personal. It's not a penalty. It's a safety deposit the government takes because it can't read your mind. The trouble is simply that almost nobody is told this is coming until the check arrives, and by then you're already on the clock. So let's talk about that clock, because this is where a surprise turns into a real, expensive mistake. The moment that check is in your hands, you have 60 days to get the money into a new IRA or another eligible retirement account. 60 days. Miss that window, and the entire amount is treated as a withdrawal. It gets taxed as ordinary income for the year, and if you happen to be under 59.5, there's a 10% early withdrawal penalty stacked on top of that. Now, 60 days sounds like plenty of time, and honestly, it usually is. People rarely miss the deadline itself. The problem isn't the calendar. The problem is the amount you have to come up with to satisfy it. Here's the catch, and it's the heart of this whole episode. To avoid any tax at all, you don't just redeposit the $240,000 you actually received. You have to put back the full $300,000, all of it. That means you have to find the missing $60,000 somewhere else, out of your own savings, your own pocket, and add it into the new IRA within those 60 days. Then you wait until you file your taxes the following year to get that $60,000 back as part of your refund. Read that again slowly, because it's strange but true. You have to temporarily replace money you never received and float it, interest-free, for up to a year. Most people simply don't have $60,000 in cash sitting around to do that. So what do? They deposit the $240,000 they got, shrug, and move on. And that missing $60,000 quietly becomes a taxable withdrawal they never intended to make. Let me make this real with a name and a number. Picture Margaret. She's 61 years old, she's retiring this year, and she has $300,000 in an old 401 crumb from the company she gave most of her career to. She calls the plan, asks to roll it over, and a couple weeks later, a check arrives, made out to her for $240,000. She wasn't expecting the withholding, and she doesn't have an extra $60,000 in cash lying around. So she does the natural thing. She deposits the $240,000 into her new IRA and figures she'll sort out the rest at tax time. But here's what actually happened. That $60,000 she never replaced is now counted as income for the year. Depending on her tax bracket, she could owe somewhere in the neighborhood of $12,000 to $15,000 in taxes on it. Money she never wanted to take out. Money she never spent. Money she didn't even hold in her hands. Gone. Purely because of how one check was written. All right. I've given you the scary version, so now let me give you the part that should make your shoulders drop, because the fix is genuinely simple. There are two ways to move retirement money, and the entire problem we just described only belongs to one of them. The first way is what Margaret did. The check comes to you. That's called an indirect rollover, sometimes a 60-day rollover, and it's the one with the 20% withholding and the ticking clock. The second way is called a direct rollover, or trustee to trustee. With a direct rollover, the money goes straight from your old plan to your new IRA. It never touches your hands. There's no check written to you, so there's nothing to withhold, no 20% held back, no 60-day race, and nothing you have to replace out of pocket. Same money, same destination, none of the danger. So here is the single most useful sentence in this entire video. When you set up the move, you say, I want a direct trustee-to-trustee rollover paid directly to my IRA. That's it. That one instruction routes your money the safe way. Now, I want you to actually use those words because the language matters more than you'd think. If you call up and just say, I'd like to roll over my 401k or send me my money, you may very well get a check in the mail made out to you, and you're right back in Margaret's situation. Be specific. Say direct. Say trustee. To trustee. Say paid to the IRA, not to me. Those few extra words are the whole difference between $300,000 staying $300,000 and watching $60,000 take a long, unnecessary detour. Now, sometimes a plan is old-fashioned, and the only way they'll move the money is by mailing a physical check. That's okay. You can still do this safely, and here's the trick. Ask them to make the check payable to the new custodian for your benefit. So instead of pay to the order of Margaret Smith, it reads something like pay to Fidelity for the benefit of Margaret Smith. A check written that way is not considered money in your hands. You're just the courier carrying it from one institution to the other. Because it's not payable to you personally, the 20% withholding doesn't apply, and you haven't triggered the 60-day problem. So, if a check is unavoidable, you don't panic. You just make sure of two things: who it's payable to, and that it's for your benefit at the new account. Get those two details right, and you're protected. Let's lay these two side by side one more time, slowly, so it really sticks. Indirect rollover, the check comes to you, 20% is withheld, you've got 60 days to redeposit the full amount, including the part you never received, and there's a real risk of an accidental tax bill and even a penalty. Direct rollover, the money moves institution to institution, zero is withheld, there's no clock, and there's nothing to float. Same goal, same destination. One of those roads has a $60,000 pothole in it, and the other one is smooth pavement. When you frame it that way, you realize there's almost never a good reason to choose the bumpy road. Unless you have a very specific, unusual reason and a tax professional guiding you, direct is simply the calm, clean choice. You might be thinking, all right, Daniel, but how often does this really matter? More often than you'd guess. This decision shows up at several ordinary moments in life. It comes up when you change jobs and you want to bring an old 401k with you instead of leaving it behind. It comes up when you finally retire and decide to consolidate 3 or 4 scattered accounts into one clean IRA so your life is simpler. It comes up when a salesperson, someone earning a commission, suggests moving your money into some new product. And it can even come up when you inherit a retirement account and have to decide how to handle it. In every single one of those moments, the same quiet question protects you. Is this a direct transfer? Or is a check coming to me? You don't need to be a tax expert. You just need to remember to ask that one question before you sign anything. Here's another wrinkle worth knowing about, and again, I'll keep it calm. With indirect rollovers, the check to you kind, there's a limit. You can generally only do one of them per 12-month period across all of your IRAs. Just one. If you accidentally do a second indirect rollover inside that window, it can become a taxable mess. But, and this is the nice part, Direct, trustee-to-trustee transfers do not count against that limit at all. You can do as many direct transfers as you need, whenever you need them. So if you're consolidating several accounts, the direct route isn't just safer from the withholding standpoint. It also keeps you from tripping over this once-a-year rule. One more reason the boring, direct path is the smart one. And if you've already taken a check this year, that's your signal to slow down and call the IRA custodian before you move anything else. Let me answer a question I can already hear some of you asking. What if it's a Roth 401k? Or what if I'm moving into a Roth IRA? The same core idea holds. You still want the money moving directly, trustee to trustee, so you don't trigger withholding or the 60-day clock. The one extra thing to be careful about is matching, like with like. Traditional money generally goes to traditional, Roth money generally goes to Roth, because mixing them can create a taxable conversion you didn't plan on. That's a perfect example of a moment to slow down and check with a tax professional. But the rollover mechanism, direct, not a check to you, stays exactly the same. The type of account changes some details. It does not change the calm move. Let me give you the happy version so you can see what right looks like. Take Robert. He's 63, also retiring, also with about $300,000 in an old 401k. But Robert watched a video a lot like this one first. So when he called his plan, he said the magic words, "I want a direct trustee-to-trustee rollover, paid directly to my IRA." The plan sent the full $300,000 straight to his new account. Nothing was withheld. No check ever came to him. There was no 60-day clock because there was nothing for him to redeposit. He didn't have to float a dime. At tax time, there was no surprise, no scramble, no lost $60,000. The whole thing was quiet and boring. And boring, when it comes to your retirement money, is exactly what you want. Same starting point as Margaret. Completely different ending. The only difference was one sentence. So let's turn all of this into something you can actually do. Here's your short checklist before you move any money. First, decide where the money is going and open that new IRA first, so it's sitting there ready to receive the funds. Second, contact the old plan and tell them, in plain words, that you want a direct trustee-to-trustee rollover. Third, if any check is involved at all, confirm out loud that it's payable to the new custodian for your benefit, never payable to you personally. Fourth, watch your statements over the next few weeks and make absolutely sure the full amount landed where it was supposed to. And fifth, if anything about your situation feels unusual, an inheritance, a Roth, a large balance, a recent rollover, take a breath and talk to a tax professional before you act. None of this is hard. It's just the difference between asking the question before instead of discovering the answer afters. Now, maybe you're watching this and your stomach just dropped because this already happened to you. The check came, the 20% got held back, and you weren't sure what to do. First, don't panic. Remember those 60 days. If you're still inside that window, you may be able to fix it by depositing the full amount, including making up the withheld portion into an eligible account before the deadline, and then recovering the withholding when you file. And if money is tight, this is exactly the kind of situation where a quick call to a tax professional is worth every penny, because they can look at your specific dates and numbers. The point is, even a mistake here is often fixable if you catch it in time. The worst thing you can do is freeze and let the 60 days slip by while you worry. Knowledge plus a little speed beats panic every time. Step back with me for a second, because there's a larger lesson here that goes way beyond rollovers. So much of protecting your retirement money isn't about being clever or finding some secret loophole or outsmarting anybody. It's about understanding how the plumbing works before you turn the valve. The people who lose that $60,000 aren't foolish. They're just moving quickly through a system whose rules nobody ever explained to them. And the people who keep their full $300,000 aren't geniuses. They just knew one question to ask. That's the whole game, really. Slow down at the big moments. Ask the plain question, and don't let anyone rush you through a decision involving your life savings. Let's bring it all together. When you move a 401k, if the check comes to you, 20% gets withheld, and you start a 60-day race to replace the SFL's amount out of your own pocket. That's how a $300,000 move can quietly turn into a surprise tax bill, and sometimes a penalty on top. The fix is one sentence. Ask for a direct trustee-to-trustee rollover paid straight to your IRA so the money never passes through your hands. If a check is unavoidable, make sure it's payable to the new custodian for your benefit, not to you. Open the receiving account first, watch your statements, and slow down for anything unusual. Same destination. None of the danger. None of this is about being sharp or beating the system. It's just about knowing how the valve works before you turn it. Ask the one question. Is a check coming to me, or is this direct? Use the one sentence, direct trustee-to-trustee paid to the IRA. Do that, and your $300,000 stays $300,000, right where it belongs, working for you. These figures and rules are current as of 2026, and tax law does change, so please confirm the specifics at irs.gov or with a tax professional before you make your move. I'm Daniel Brooks. Take your time, ask the calm question, and I'll see you on the next one.